With so much on offer, perhaps we should consider the possibility of a universe with only 2 dimensions, or one with 20, or a cosmos in which the past, present, and future all exist at once. Something as fanciful as a universe where inhabitants exist as multiple entities simultaneously, and travel between the worlds is instantaneous. Places on the other side of the Big Bang where all the clocks run backwards and ruined castles rebuild themselves. I think that there are far stranger things than anything human, mathematicians, or astrophysicists have come to dream of. When I try to expand my mind to visualize the infinite possibilities, it brings me right back to the 2 most important atoms, the 2 that bind us together in the single molecule of a relationship. This journey is about some of those relationships and another universe, a very real place where the unholy houses of our worries have roses around the door, and every good strand in our life is a creeping stone bramble. The next room I walked into was alive with water, light, and the sound of dripping from glass tubes. In the medicine bottles that lined the walls, the balsams had resolved long ago. With time and the glow of the lights, the royal dye had softened. As I ventured further, the mist lifted and the reflection of dreamlike signals danced all around me like northern lights. There was a sign on the tank that read, "Because they are unprotected most of the time, eggs of oviparous mammals have a tough and leathery shell." Next to it was another sign, "Special offer." With the slow music that played all around, it was impossible to determine which came first, the sense that she was begging for attention, or the acute fascination I was feeling. All I knew is that I didn't want to be swept into making an impulse purchase that I would later regret. Aquariums take some looking after, but, always being one to follow my bliss, I was soaking up everything, and swimming around the edge of the experience, pricking at my psychic skin, was another thing that flirted with me through chinks of light. The bargain of the century. A water bombshell that set all my sirens going. I just turned around and BAM! My calm was ravaged by a buxomly seductive hybrid, half woman, half fish. The nameplate read Grace, and she had style to match, gently swishing back and forth behind a cigarette in a warm salt water tank, held together by rusting bolts. Save for the whine of the pumps, all was silent, and I stood for a moment, gaining my breath in amazement as she dropped the cigarette into its holder and dipped under the water to catch a fish. She took a bite, chewed and swallowed slowly, all the time watching for my reaction through the murky haze and a plumb line of bubbles that rose from her nostrils. She held herself up and out of the water by her tail, with her hands resting on jutting hips and a look in her eye that said, "I'm the only diva." As I moved closer, the flirting began properly. I could only liken the sequence to the courtship dance of an octopus. First, there were the copulatory glances, intense eye contact, broken momentarily by a lifting and lowering of her eyes. She followed this with smiles, coy looks, and a tossing of the head as she mirrored me, whilst I walked around the tank with the reflection of her scales flashing in my glasses. The things that she did to tease were a lesson. The false-coloured eyes and lashes that fluttered like a butterfly left my mind frozen between thought and expression. Tempted by the vapour, musks and ambers as sweet as a garden transmitting a scent to fill all heaven and earth, I drew a great couch from its place by the potted palms, swept off the dust, climbed upon it, slipped off my shoes and trousers, and, once the pounding in my blood had softened, lowered myself into the water. There were no words with Grace, only clicks and slaps on the surface of the water. What use would words be? They could never have explained the way that I was feeling. As soon as every animal is born, it seeks after pleasure and spends a life rejoicing in it as the greater good, while rejecting pain as the greatest bad, and as far as possible avoids it. and does this with all the innocence and sound judgment of Mother Nature herself. There's no need to discuss why her pleasure should be pursued. It was a matter sensed like the heat of fire, the whiteness of snow, the sweetness of honey. Hers was a waiting smile, and of course a girl should never be left waiting, and I wouldn't want to be remembered as uncaring or unthinking. So I made towards her with my eyes closed and a kiss composed, ready on my lips. Recalling it now is like being in a dream. The journey to her, the intrepidation and concern about how the kiss should be. Just enough pressure to excite, not so much as to repel. I wouldn't want to startle her. Drifting around the water with eyes half closed, I'm sure that I fell asleep at some point. But I know now that I'm sitting here wide awake in the full broad sunlight filling this room, and I can't in the least believe that I was fully asleep all the way through the experience. What sticks in the mind? The dazzling ceiling lights dancing on the surface of the pale green water, the window behind her framing her figure, and by half was she a lady, as fair can be. There was no dreaming there.